Running never did much good. Hiding doesn't last forever. You can't run faster when it's you you're running from. So you throw your hands up like doves to the setting sun. Somewhere, John, the stars are falling like jewels upon a thin black veil. You'll find the mysteries enthralling. 5 seconds seems like 5 billion years. 10,000 galaxies away, yet still so near.
Welcome to Karen Holton's podcast. Karen permanently lost 178 pounds and found happiness and success by following her own advice. She has now developed that advice into the quantum health transformation. Heal, evolve, and thrive. Karen's website offers a free webinar workshop series, and you'll also find tools, methods, and practices to assist you to become the change you want to see in the world. She believes that we are all connected. Heal the planet by healing yourself. Connect with Karen at her website, KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, and through Facebook at Facebook.com/Quantum Health Transformation. Now for the podcast.
Today is Quantum Health Transformation 2.0 Step 9 Black, Introduction to Nubby Ball and Light Shadow Integration. So this is where we're starting. Last in the orientation, we went through each of these different steps and I gave you a little bit of an outline about it. So today we're just going to start with step 9 down here. So the Nubby Ball led me to understand that everything is fractal in nature, and this tool allows us to see our own fractal flow. So what this is going to do is give us a small illustration on how to look at reality in more complex terms so that we understand a more balanced view of what's going on. We are, and everything we perceive is divinity diversified. The Nubby Ball tool represents a tesseract. A tesseract is infinity cycled through what we perceive as finite time and space. All levels of reality from the P-L-A-N-C-K, to the universal expanse follows the same dynamic flow. All beliefs, societies, and systems can be assessed with this model of analysis. As it is above, so it is below. Good, bad, light, dark, gender, any binary concept only considers the 2 points among infinite possibilities within the realm of reality. Truth and balance are at the center, and the more points we consider, the more we come to understand reality, social as well as other aspects of life. The best we can do is to plot the opposites of an issue or situation at the poles and then consider as many other additional points as we can. Now, for those of you out there who have not watched the Step 9 primer, the 2.0 Step 9 primer, it will be published on YouTube sometime this week. I really recommend you go back and watch that first because it's going to give you all the information you need to be able to get the most out of this live session. So taking a look at things in more complex terms gives us a better sense of the whole, and it leads us into 4th and 5th dimensional thinking. A Nubby Ball is also the flower of life. It's dynamic, ever-changing, and evolving under influence. If you shine a light on one side of a Nubby Ball, got a little Nubby Ball right here. Pretend this is like a little planet. If you shine a light on one side, you would have like day on one side and like night on the other. You'd have a North Pole, a South Pole, and East, West, and everything in between. If you shine a light on one side of a Nubby Ball, this represents the Nubby Ball, you find a light side and a shadow side. Likewise, no matter how much we deny this conditioned duality and attempt to walk in the light, our shadow side remains. We share a collective consciousness of light and shadow as well as a personal dichotomy. I will show you how to use the Nubby Ball to achieve personal light-body shadow integration so we can reclaim our full potential and personal power. So for those of you who have not watched the primer, I'll just go over this again. Basically, you have a North Pole and a South Pole, very similar to a planet. You have one side in sun and one side in darkness. And that basically gives you your basic model that you can start plotting points on. We'll get into that in a minute. So this is the Nubby Ball. Before we get into actually using it as a tool, though, we're going to talk a little bit about why even go there, why even use a Nubby Ball, why even try to look at reality different, especially because most of reality is dished out to us in a dichotomy of good, bad, up, down, left, right. Why would we want to deviate from that? So we're going to talk about some reasons why it would behoove us to start looking at things in more complex terms. So the first thing is it allows us to see more of an issue, situation, or way of being with a more balanced sense of the whole. So if you take the Nubby Ball, Devin, can you throw me yours because mine ran away? Thank you. Okay, so if we plot north and south, something's good and something's bad. What about all the nubs in the middle? What about all the nubs that are not so bad and not so good? And then what happens when we take a look then at the light and then the shadow side of that? We're going to get a lot more information. Okay, I'm just going to use good and bad. It's very simple. So we have good and we have bad down here. We've got all the possible permutations of goodness and badnesses plotted on this ball, which would give us a more fuller idea of what's really going on. And then we have the light and we have the shadow side going on. So doesn't that mean that maybe if you were in the bad section of this and you were, if you were in the bad section of this but you were on the light, wouldn't that mean that maybe you're doing the right thing for the wrong reason? And if you were again on the shadow side, but you were doing something that you actually, maybe you're kind of a bad person, but you're going to do something good out of the badness. So you see, this is the thing, is that life is very complicated. It's not just good or bad. So we're taught that's a bad person or that's a good person. We're leaving out all the other aspects of their being to look at and to consider, to see them as a whole person. And so only by doing that can we flush things out. Okay, so the Nubby Ball plumps out the 3D and reveals the dynamic, interconnected nature of all things. So this really helps us with our personal growth, because now we can take a look at things and see the negative side, the positive side, and to see that there are options that maybe we didn't consider that are in between good or in between bad or in between one of the many dichotomies that we're faced with. Use of the Nubby Ball assists us with overcoming our binary programming and our black-white, positive-negative, up-down, good-evil worldview so that we can see things as truly complex and dynamic. So basically, a Nubby Ball helps you to overcome duality thinking. And duality thinking has been programmed into all of us because it suits the economic, political construct that we're born into. It's set up to operate on a binary system. But as we evolve and we understand things in more complex terms, we need a new model or a new way of looking at reality. And I think this does a good job of giving it to us. So the Nubby Ball also helps us to weed out the BS and allows for a greater degree of self-analysis and character building. So if you hear, this is happening, you hear it on the news, this is happening, and this is a really bad thing, you can take out your instead of having a freak out over the so-called bad thing you're told is happening, you can take out a Nubby Ball and go, yeah, if there's a bad thing happening, we know there's a good thing happening here too. We know that there's a lot of neutral happening going on. We're not going to just be suckered into believing everything we're told because we're starting to think on a more critical level. The next thing that it does is it helps us to understand and upload complex data into our thinking schema. So once we're familiar that there are many aspects to every issue, everything, we can then start to sort of stretch our minds so that we're looking at things in broader terms. And what happens from that is we also, because the neural pathways are being forged within the brain, those neural pathways also serve other purposes for us. So for an example, say we want to learn something that is a philosophical concept, or you want to talk about something to do with quantum physics. You can now understand what other people are telling you, or what your YouTube video or your TED Talk is telling you, because you can assimilate it from a whole bunch of different points all at once. So it makes your learning way faster and more effective. The Nubby Ball helps us to understand social issues which may have caused discomfort or awkwardness in the past. Does anyone have an example of how that might help them in their social life? And how I actually stumbled on this concept to start with was I was out walking and I saw a friend of mine who I knew really well, and I waved at them. I was happy to see my friend. I haven't seen them for a while. And the person looked right through me as if I wasn't here. And I felt really hurt feelings. I went, oh my gosh, what's going on? And maybe my friend hates me now. And it wasn't until I realized all the possible reasons that maybe even didn't have anything to do with me, why this person didn't recognize me. Maybe I didn't look the same as the last time they saw me. Maybe they're seeing me out of context. And until you see people in the, if you've become friends with someone, say, who works at Tim Hortons, you always see them at Tim Hortons. When you see them then at Walmart, you might not recognize them. It could have been anything. It could have been that this person had so many things on their mind, they were preoccupied and they were just not there, not even noticing me. It could have been someone dropping a piano on an elephant behind me. Who knows? I will never know, but I know one thing is I don't have to take it personally, and I don't have to worry that something's wrong, because I know that there are infinite possibilities on what might be going on in that social situation. So I'm a lot calmer, and I can leave the social situations that maybe didn't go as well as what I had hoped they would be like, but maybe it doesn't matter. Because I'm not going to drive myself crazy trying to figure it out. It just was what it was, and I walk away, and next time you try again, right? So it really helps that way. Another thing it really helps is it helps to reconcile cognitive dissonance, and I know this topic is near and dear to me, so I'm going to bring it up. Medical marijuana. If you are in some states in the United States, or you're in, say, Victoria, BC, you can walk into a dispensary. There's maybe 2 or 3 of them on every major street block, and you can buy medical marijuana, and you can go home and you can get relief from your suffering. And you try doing that in Red Deer, Alberta. No. You try telling your doctor that your doctor from BC gave you a prescription for medical cannabis, and it's really helping you a lot. And here they go, oh my gosh, we have to get you in a drug rehabilitation program. And it's nuts. So that's what cognitive dissonance is, and we face it all the time. And what cognitive dissonance is the cracks in the construct. Because they want to paint a picture like everything is all smooth and perfect, and you just do what you're told and everything is going to be okay. Well, no, and these are the cracks, and the cracks we're supposed to pretend don't exist. And we're supposed to pretend that there's people in power that know what they're doing. And we're supposed to pretend all this stuff. No wonder we have anxiety, because we know on an intuitive level and also on an intellectual level that something's wrong. So medical marijuana could be acceptable and a wonderful healing modality here, and on the other end, you're going to go to jail if anybody reports you for using it. That's cognitive dissonance, and it messes with people's heads. But if we get an understanding that even within the realm of where it's acceptable, there's some shadow stuff going on, and even in the realm where it's considered unacceptable, there's still some good work going on. So it helps us to see things more cohesively, so we're not just freaked out by the blunt edges of one reality to another as we're sold it province to province, or state to state, or country to country, or even region to region. It happens everywhere. Okay, so it also helps us to more fully integrate that which we choose to believe. So say we choose to believe that a certain food or a certain thing is really good for us, we can understand that it's good for us maybe on a whole lot of other levels. And maybe even on a spiritual level, it might be good for us. So the same would happen if something maybe isn't so good for us. It helps us to really take a look at what's going on a much, much deeper area. And then we can also sift our own beliefs through this system of analysis to decide what beliefs are helping us and which ones are holding us back. And getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work for us anymore. So the Nubby Ball offers us a way to look at issues more analytically and certainly less emotionally. Like go back to a social situation where I could have really hurt feelings and think, oh, that person hates me. Well, they clearly said this to me and that wasn't very nice. Or I can bring out my ball and pretty soon I don't even have to plot anything. I go, yeah, you're right. It's all good. We don't really know what's going on. That person might have had a bad day. Then maybe someone in their family just died. Maybe I heard it different than they said it. It doesn't matter. It takes the emotionality out of it and puts it more into logical consequence. And chances are you're going to take that ball, which a lot of drama could be plotted on a Nubby Ball, and you're going to throw it away because you don't need it anymore. And it's not even real. Not in the true and in the now. It's not real. So Nubby Ball expands our awareness, and our knowledge is power, and self-knowledge is true personal power. And the Nubby Ball tool strongly illustrates why the standardizing bureaucracy of the economic, political, social construct is so limiting. How many of you have had to fill out forms and then you're supposed to tick the box and the boxes don't have nothing to do with your reality? And you go, well, should I pick this one or that one? Well, just make your best guess closest to it. No. Even male and female is no longer appropriate. There's so many folks who fall between the areas. And as we are discovering our true, authentic selves, we're going to fit less and less into these bureaucratic paradigms that want us to just give them the facts, yes or no, black and white, as though that's the way the world really is, when it isn't. So the other thing too is the Nubby Ball tool dissolves conflict. When you've got a Nubby Ball, you really can't brand anybody as an asshole because people move around on the Nubby Ball depending on their circumstances. There could be lots of reasons why someone comes from a position they come from. And so pretty soon I realized that nobody was wrong. If anyone was wrong, it was me for thinking other people were wrong. Everybody's position has a valid spot. And so I can just go namaste. I recognize the God in you, and if I don't want to be around that person, energetically, I just won't be around that person. Or I can. And that same thing goes with everything. Whether it's a course we're taking at school, whether it's family outings. I can't believe how many people have said to me, a few in particular have said to me, you know, I go to these family get-togethers because I have to for Christmas and there's always a holiday almost every month and I have to go, and I hate it. It's excruciating. I feel put down, I don't feel respected, I just don't want to go anymore. And so I said, well, what about having a Nubby Ball and having on there the position that you don't have to go at all? There's lots of ways you can kind of part go but not really go. Everything is on there. It just stretches our awareness and takes us out of the tiny fixation point we're on and brings us out into other options. So one woman, I saw her about 3 months later, and she just said, oh, thank you, Karen, you helped me more than you can ever dream possible. I stopped going to those family events, and I'm so happy now. And I just told them calmly and quietly that it just wasn't good for me, and I'm just not doing it anymore. And the world didn't end. Things still happen. So that's how it really helps to help us to respect all positions, and it also really sharpens our critical thinking skills, which a lot of people have lost the fine art of critical thinking, and helps bring that back. So I just want to say you do not need to believe anything in order to benefit from this tool. Don't worry about understanding the quantum aspects of Nubby Ball. Just pretend it works and give it a try, and the more you practice, the easier it becomes, and soon it'll become an automatic system of learning. And truth, by the way, and this is very interesting, truth is plural. But we're taught it's only a singularity. So only one religion can have truth. Only one politic can have truth. Only one healing modality has truth. Well, that's pack a bull. Truth is plural. Truth is something that evolves and changes and expands and morphs. But we have a legal system set up on a certain bunch of truths that may not even be truths. And so this helps you to get reoriented back into your own reality, one that you can live with and hopefully does you some good. Okay, so now we're going to move into another part of the program where we're going to spend about 10 minutes unpacking a couple of issues, and then we're going to go off camera. So I'll be in about 10 minutes. I'm going to go off camera, and then we're going to do some skill building. We're basically going to break off into groups, and we're going to discuss some items and flesh out our own concepts of what the Nubby Ball can do. And then we're going to bring it back, and then we'll go back on camera, and we'll just compile all our findings and see what we can make, see sort of a little experiment, see what we can make. And so now I am going to put down my Nubby Ball, because you've all seen it. Just put it there. I'm going to have all my little notes here. Take a look at another subject, and this is my understanding of religion. And it used to mess with my head because I liked religion. I liked the cozy feeling I felt from being in my little congregation and everything else. But it always blew me away. First of all, I was always in trouble because I was breaking one rule or another. And it always amazed me that I could go across the street to a different church and they were not going to complain about whatever it was they complained about at the other church. So at some you can drink coffee and some you cannot, and on it goes. And I thought, how can they all say this? And even in the extraterrestrial spiritual lines, you've got this person who says, you know, she's speaker one, only she speaks for the extraterrestrials, no one else. And then you get someone else and she says the same thing, and I'm not going to mention any names here, but they all say they're the only ones that are downstepping the information from source or from grand creator or whatever. And I say, how can that be? And it messed with my head. So I came up with, can you see that okay, Chrissy, from there? I came up with, again, plotted on the Nubby Ball. So I basically took the North Pole would be the theocratic, where God decides everything. You don't even use toilet paper unless the Bible says you can use toilet paper or whatever your religious book is, right? And you're 100% ruled, and you don't do anything that isn't part of what you're told is what God wants you to do, okay? And down here I put science, because science claims that it does not, it's impartial. It's completely impartial. And a lot of the subjects and stuff are played out within different religions, somewhere between this. There are some religions who believe in science, incorporate science right into their spirituality, and some of them not so much. And then there's the whole shadow issue on this. But the truth, just imagine that your Nubby Ball is all the different religions, infinite number of nubs on this ball are all the religions of the world. Where would truth be? Where do you think truth is?
In the center.
In the center, exactly. Exactly, at the center. Well, I guess I asked it and it's right on here. Okay? The common thread. So that's what I did, and that's why I'm a pan-spiritual kind of girl. Because I draw from everything. There's so much goodness out there. Why would I want to ignore this and that because I want to stay in my little box? And so the common threads are harm none and treat other people really well. But it's also treat yourself well. Also should also be in there, right? So you want to treat other people as the Christians say, treat other people, love other people the way you love yourself. But then people don't know how to love themselves. They don't know how to love other people. But the point is, the principle is the same as harm none. Harm none includes not harming the self, right? And so the pagans have the harm none. And so it's all the same thing. So you go to the center, and you take a look at what the common threads are, and you pull them all together from everything you know, Buddhism, everything, and you go, wow, they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying the same thing. And then I realized from this that Holy Spirit, or prana, or chi, or whatever you want to call it, universal source energy, universal tender mercy, it reaches everyone regardless of their present state of consciousness. Doesn't matter. Wherever they're at, right here, right now, there's magic for them. And people just don't know that. So they're scurrying off into these little religions trying to find favor with God, and they don't realize they're already in favor with God. You can't not be. And I'm using God very loosely at this point because I'm not meaning to glorify one religion or over another. Would never do that. But you get the idea on how powerful this tool is once we start using it. Okay, so now what we're going to do as a group, we're going to unpack. I made it easy because I put a lot of information on here. Law enforcement is one of my favorite ones to unpack because it's so dichotomized. People either believe law enforcement is so good or they believe it's so bad. So I thought just taking a look at a more complex model of the Nubby Ball. Now what we're looking at, I'm going to read it. I know you can read it, but I'm going to read it along with you. Now we're going to look at, just say hypothetically, good cop, bad cop, and a light side and a shadow side. Okay, so it becomes a little bit more complex at this point. Okay, so let's take a look at, this is to introduce you to the shadow work. So let's take a look at law enforcement, the positive or the light aspects. It soothes the population. Individuals believe that they are safer because of law enforcement. That's not an out there thought. Many, many, many people totally believe that. And I'm not saying they're wrong either. Okay, so please don't think I'm saying this is good and this is bad. I'm using this as a system of analysis. We're just unpacking law enforcement. And we're not taking everything into consideration, and it's just a tool here. Okay, so what does law enforcement do? One, it fights crime and it provides civil and national defense. It ensures public safety by enforcing safety rules and regulations, keeping the peace, maintaining order. They are the first responders during crisis and disaster, and they do a lot of fundraising for charity. This is all on the positive side or the light side, let's say the light side of law enforcement. So you can see why they have law enforcement for some pretty good reasons. A lot of people are worried about chaos. When you get to understand chaos, you'll understand that it's actually a very orderly system. But people think it means, oh, everyone's going to go nuts and lose control. Because they forget that we got truth in here. We got a system of law in here. Once we start to ascend, at any point along there, we start to develop law in here. And the law in here says we're not going to go out drunk driving, and the law in here says, you know, we're not going to slap anybody because that's a horrible thing to do. The law in here, did you want to say something?
Would you say that's your moral compass?
Very much so, your moral compass. It grows, and it grows with tools like the Nubby Ball. It grows more comprehensive and much more able to guide us with more knowledge, and knowledge is power. So we want to, instead of being afraid of the shadow self and being taught that's Satan or that's evil, we want to learn from both and bring it together, and then we're a unified whole, and then we really start to go somewhere. But more on that later on. Let's just finish up with law enforcement. So we've got the dark aspects. It disturbs the population because individuals do recognize some oppressive results, and I've just listed a few here. So the bureaucratic system expects guilt and is heavily influenced by propaganda. So it's supposed to be that you're innocent until proven guilty, but it's actually the opposite, as a lot of people would find out that our law enforcement is often a system that is looking for problems. And what happens if you're looking for something? You find it. So you can be out there looking at the world through glasses that are looking for problems, and you can also look at the world looking for all the things that are going really well. Well, that one's really into finding problems and assessing what they're seeing as being possibly problem situations. Then there's police brutality. There's lawful but erroneous persecution. An example, again, is medical cannabis. It might be completely lawful in Red Deer, Alberta, for a policeman to see somebody out, say, smoking marijuana, and for them to arrest them, detain them, and find out what's going on. That might be, I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying that might be. But does that mean that it's actually right when that person got their prescription because they got cancer and it's the only thing that's working for them? right? So I'm just saying, it leads to some lawful but erroneous persecution of people. And also, law enforcement is very much tied into organized crime. And I mean, it's beyond the scope of this talk for me to give you example after example. Anything I present on here, please Google it. Google the heck out of it and find out what other people are saying about it. Don't just go, well, Karen says, because that actually is not the point here. So then also the law enforcement is very heavily embedded within the economic construct. So it encourages crime. How does it encourage crime? It encourages crime because it feeds the glut of institutions and services that provide services. So for instance, courts. If there wasn't a whole lot of crime, would all those people have jobs working for the courts? What about the lawyers? What about the prisons? What about the bureaucrats that decide on how it should be? What about the insurance companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which boosts the GNP, which is the health of the economy. So the GNP is your gross national product, and it's boosted by all the money that changes hands by feeding this bureaucratic system that's supposed to be maintaining law and order. But what's it really doing? You know, we got to look at the different aspects of what things are about, and that's why we're going to get into this light and shadow work. So 3 was erosion of personal rights and freedoms. So you've got your Health Canada permit for medical cannabis, your doctor's prescribed it, you're legally using it, and oh my goodness, everywhere you go you're getting so much stress and tension that you're scared to even use the medicine that you're prescribed. Someone else could be taking their Tylenol 3s or their Percocets or whatever, that's okay. Oh, 4 o'clock, I'm supposed to take my medicine, but the cannabis user doesn't have that. So I know it sounds like I'm really pro cannabis, but to be honest with you, I'm going to just full disclosure tell you, I actually am very excited about the latest findings on what it's doing for helping people reduce their suffering, helping them to cope, and actually curing diseases that we were told are incurable. So that's it for law enforcement. But does it give you a nice kind of an idea on how everything has a shadow, and everything also has a light? Okay, we're back from our small groups, and we decided that we would take a look at the dichotomy of rich and poor. And so we put rich on the top and we put poor on the bottom. No reason for that. It's just how it is. Okay, you could put poor at the top or rich, it doesn't matter. You know, when you look at the planet from space, there really is no north and no south. We just make all that stuff up. So anyways, we put rich at the top, we put poor at the bottom, and then we cast a shadow on one side. And so now, exactly. Can you think of someone else, Devin? Who did you suggest?
George Lucas. He sold
George
Star
Lucas.
Wars to Disney for $40 million and then donated all the money to wildlife preservation.
So that would actually put, let's go back to our notes because it goes really well with yours, and that is on the rich shadow side, right? So there's a rich light side. And another example is Oprah Winfrey. I know she's set up some amazing educational systems in Africa and different things like that too. She's an uber rich and really tries to do as much light work as she can. Okay, let's look at the dark side now. The thing that's making the fact that there's poor people in the first place often comes from that shadow rich side, right? So what are some examples of the shadow rich side?
Pharmaceutical companies.
Pharmaceutical industry, the big, not the industry itself, but the CEOs and the people that get paid obscene amounts of money and actually create things that actually make people poor, make them sick, make them be more into the have-nots. That would definitely be a shadow side. So being rich doesn't make someone a good person or a bad person. It's how they choose to proceed with their life and how they proceed with their resources. And are they interested in only themselves, or are they interested in humanity? Okay, so with the poor side, what we did is we looked at some people who are poor. What's the shadow side from the poor side? Crime. Yeah, a lot of people feel it's not my fault that I'm poor, I don't have enough money, I'm going to go break into rich people's houses and steal their stuff. Poor people who are afraid that there isn't enough because they've been taught there isn't enough. and they can become very competitive. And then we went into some really positive light beings who are also very, very poor. Who did we come up with, Denise?
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa.
Gandhi.
Exactly. Lots and lots of people who don't have much money and have done amazing, wonderful things on the planet. Again, you know, one day when we do a Nubby Ball on the culture of the rich, it's not actually a piece of cake. Oh, the rules, the richer you get, the higher you go up in the stratosphere of society, the more intensely controlling it is. So you think even, you know, at a very low level of wealth, or no wealth, you know, you still know that there's certain rules that apply to how you act socially in order to be accepted by your group. Well, it becomes intensely concentrated as you go up. So, you know, you think, I was going to tell the joke, I told Denise and Devin this joke, is what's the difference between rich people and poor people? Poor people think they'd be happy if they were rich, right? So who's happier, rich people or poor people? Poor people, because they think they'd be happier if they were rich. They have that hope, oh, if I'm rich, I'm going to be happy, right? They don't know that isn't true. But anyway, the point is, now we have covered more nubs on a Nubby Ball. So in a very short time of analysis, we spent only 10 minutes discussing an issue. We really didn't have any prep time or any time to think about it. And look at what we threw together, a very complex analysis on the whole social issue of rich and poor. So just think we can use that same system for anything else, anything. And it just makes such a big difference on what you know, and what you know is power. Welcome back to Quantum Health Transformation 2.0, Light Shadow Integration from Step 9. If you haven't done so already, please downsize this video and call up from YouTube or from my website the primer. So it's a Quantum Health Transformation 2.0 Step 9 primer, which has all the notes and all the information, and you might want to have them both small sized or split screen so that you can watch what I'm saying and also refer directly to the notes if you want to. But do go back and watch the primer if you haven't done so already, because it's got all the details. We're just kind of working with the information that's in the primer at this point. Okay, so I got a couple of books to show you folks. I'm going to put my Nubby Ball down for a minute and hope it stays. These are the two books that I've mentioned in the primer. The Denial of Death is by Ernest Becker, and he did another one called Escape from Evil. And if you want to learn about a very good analysis on the collective shadow that we have in society, this is a fantastic book. And when you understand how old the shadow is and how much energy it's exerted on our reality and for so long, and it's been able to keep replicating itself through history because we are busy suppressing it. We're busy suppressing the shadow, and so we're all trying to operate in the light all the time, and we're not taking in that vast drove of knowledge that we all have available to us from the collective consciousness. So the other book is more about the personal shadow side, and what this book is called Meeting the Shadow, the Hidden Power of the Dark Side of Human Nature. It's got writings, short articles by everyone from Jung to Audre Lorde, all kinds of very brilliant people who write about the shadow and about light shadow integration. Because again, we were born into a world where we were told this isn't appropriate and this you don't do, and nice girls don't do that, and nice boys don't say that, and we're taught that. And so what do we do with the parts of us that want to do those things, or just happen to have the inclination and not even putting any morality on it? So this is an awesome, awesome book. These two books, which are featured in the primer, I really recommend them. There's actually a lot of stuff on the internet about the shadow self. There's a brilliant speaker by the name of Teal Scott, who recently remarried. I believe she's Teal Swan now. She does talks about the shadow self and how important that work is to all of us. So I just want to recommend those. And I'll tell you why most of us don't want to do shadow work. It's the kind of icky part of self-analysis and self-understanding, and we tend to not want to do it because we don't want to see it, especially once we get to be 20, 30, 40 years old. We've got a fairly large personal shadow and a very large collective shadow that we've accumulated. And it's a very, very scary thing for a lot of people. But what happens if you don't do shadow work is you end up with a situation called denial. So the shadow remains and is activated fairly regularly without your conscious knowledge or consent, and we don't get the results that we wish for in life. So I don't know if anyone here has ever had suffered from personal sabotage, where you went and sabotaged yourself and you went, why the heck did I do that? I really wanted to do that differently. Probably that's your shadow. And it's trying to give you information, but you don't want to hear it because it's scary. I'm not saying you personally, but us, when I say you, as a general humanity, don't want to hear that. So the other thing that happens as long as we're suppressing the shadow is we project. So we blame other people for their faults, and our relationships fail to develop fully and remain superficial. We get caught up in victim role-playing, and our relationships tend to fail. So I'll give you an example. I used to go work out at the gym, and there was a woman who came in and she talked too much and she talked incessantly and she talked too loud, and I couldn't stand her. And I went away from there and went, wow, I'm having a really strong reaction to that woman. What's this about, Karen? And I realized I have the same traits. And I was projecting them onto her, and then I was scapegoating her and blaming her and labeling her as a bad person, because I want her to carry that part of me that I didn't want to admit about myself. And the funny thing is, as soon as I realized that, next time I saw her, she didn't bother me at all. In fact, I went over to her house and had dinner, and we became not close friends, but it was very interesting how when we face stuff, it just disappears, like poof, it's gone. It's so exciting. But projection is something that people really do, and they really get into the victim role playing, and they see this person as the victim and that person as the victim, as the victimizer, the evil one, and then there's the rescuer, and it just becomes a big social mess, and we're steeped in it. We don't even know we're doing it, but that's where the shadow work helps us to see what it is we're actually doing and to see the dynamics more clearly. Projection. We blame others for their faults, and our relationships fail to develop fully and remain superficial. We get caught up in victim role-playing, and our relationships tend to fail. Then the third thing that can happen is failure to evolve. If we don't get to know ourselves, then it impedes self-reflection and personal growth. However, if we boldly go where few have gone before, and choose to do an honest appraisal of our whole selves, we can look forward to less denial and less subconscious sabotage. Life becomes richer and more rewarding. Without the need for projection, we no longer bully, scapegoat, or stereotype others, because we can accept folks as they really are. We will find little reason for dramatic entanglements, so relationships become deeper and more fulfilling. And finally, when we choose to do an honest appraisal of our whole selves, we can take personal responsibility. That's when we really start cooking with gas. So we're now able to engage in more meaningful self-reflection and confidently make our own necessary adjustments for personal growth and evolution. Now we can truly begin to thrive and find the happiness and contentment we deserve. So now we're going to work on unpacking the shadow again, and I'm going to ask my audience here for a subject. This is a large group deconstruct of something that is in the collective light shadow, some issue that is common for the collective light shadow. And we're going to include with that doing the wrong thing for the right reason, and doing the right thing for the wrong reason, and doing the wrong thing for the right reason. So if north is good and south is bad, what is the shadow and what is the light? So we need to pick a topic, any topic. Which one would you guys like to use? I consider the medical industry a collective shadow, where everybody thinks, oh, you get sick, you go to the doctor, that's where you get good kind of treatment. Another good one, I would say, is politics. I'm going to vote for that guy because he really cares about me. So, does anyone have another one they want to try?
An angry mob.
Pardon?
An angry mob.
Angry mob?
Yeah. They all feel justified, so they do bad things.
Okay, let's do an angry mob. Good one. Okay, so we've had a little bit of practice with our Nubby Ball now. This Nubby Ball now represents an angry mob. Do you think there is good reasons maybe why there could be an angry mob? Do you think an angry mob could feel pretty justified in being its angry mob?
It depends on the situation. Like if it's women's rights, I think that's a good example of an angry mob. Or if it's something for a demonstration, I think it's one of those things where an angry mob is in the gray area. Because an angry mob isn't a riot,
right?
And it's not out of control yet.
Right. So it's a great place to start to take a look at the whole Nubby Ball as being the angry mob. But what do we want to put for the North Pole? What attribute or aspect of the angry mob? Do you want it to be justification? Do you want it to be something that we can plot the opposite on? So maybe a person is basically a good person, but they're part of an angry mob. Maybe someone's what we would call a bad person, part of the angry mob, or it can be something else. What you came up with the angry mob. What do you think a positive aspect would be?
Positive demonstration.
Yes, exactly. A positive demonstration. A group that gets together because they're trying to raise awareness, or they're trying to be heard, or they're trying to do something to make the world a better place.
That'd be a peaceful demonstration.
A peaceful demonstration, very good. Then on the other side, maybe we have someone who's also part of that group, and they're just shit disturber. They just like to disturb shit. They get off energetically from they feed off of other people's uncomfort.
So you take a peaceful demonstration and incite some seeds of fear in them.
Yeah, get that mob riled up maybe. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the shadow side of the mob. And we're going to look at the light side of the mob. So what's a shadow? What would be a shadow side? A shadow side of what could happen when there's a mob?
Misinformation.
Misinformation.
Police brutality.
Police brutality, or even mob-activated
mob mentality.
Violence. Mob, exactly, mob mentality. Probably, I would say violence certainly could erupt in there. Even people that are coming together for the good reason, they want to raise awareness. I was involved in political demonstrations in BC when they lowered the minimum wage from $8 down to $6 an hour for people who were new to the workforce.
Training wage.
Training wage, they called it. So meanwhile, some poor woman whose husband just lost his job and she's going to go get a job at McDonald's. She's only going to get $6 an hour because previous to that she hadn't been a wage earner. How is that going to really help their situation? So anyway, I got involved in some protests, and I won't get into too much detail, but basically it was very interesting to see we of course thought we were operating on the light side. We were trying to bring awareness and bring lightness, and all the crap that happened on the shadow side. It was quite an education that I personally don't want to repeat. But so we can see that bad stuff can happen. But then let's take a look at the light side. Oops, I guess this would be the light side. There's light over there. Okay, this would be the shadow side. So on the light side, what can happen? Raise awareness. Do you think it actually sometimes a group of people coming together wanting to express their displeasure over something, it actually could do some good?
Yeah,
Well,
it spurs change.
Exactly.
Look at the demonstrations in the States with Martin Luther King. Everybody's like, well, there's not going to get anything done. And they did get a lot of things done because they had that mentality.
Good example. So different, what we might consider mob groups, like Malcolm X's group, Martin Luther King's group, the Black Panthers, all that kind of stuff. Well, then lo and behold, there even was a black president of the United States, which is what came out of that. How amazing is that?
Yeah, and it's like if you have a mob where you have a demonstration,
Mhm.
there's a lot of dominoes that have that effect. It's
Yeah.
a big domino effect.
Yeah, I just want to clarify from what I said too. I didn't mean to say that the work of Martin Luther King or Malcolm X was mob or created mobs. As an indirect effect, yeah, there were mobs, but actually a lot of the leaders at the time who were trying to raise awareness were very much into nonviolence, were very much into peaceful demonstrations. The horribleness actually didn't even come from them, and a lot of that shadow side was actually even constructed and organized, and then that takes us back to our ball of the rich and the poor and the shadow side and the power and the control again, right? But you can see how it's very complex. But it isn't until we deconstruct something. So even if you had like a family issue where it could be anything, you can still, you can say, okay, I don't like that uncle, he's a bad person. But you can say, okay, well, what good qualities does that uncle have? Now, when that uncle drinks, maybe he's a real problem for a lot of people. But what about when he's not drinking? Maybe he's in his remorse phase, whatever, and he's out fixing everybody's cars. Like, we don't know. I'm just saying, hypothetically. It helps us to get a better idea of the whole. And everybody who does a Nubby Ball will do their own version of how they see light and how they see dark and how they see goodness and how they see badness. One I was going to do, but I think it's a bit too controversial, is I like to do abortion clinics. Because I'm not saying I like to do abortion clinics. I didn't mean that the way it came out. What I meant was it's a good Nubby Ball tool of analysis. You can see all the shadow stuff is very clear, all the light side very clear. You can see your pro-lifers, and you can see your
personal choice.
Your pro-choicers. And I have some people, I have friends on all different nubs of the ball, but because I have a Nubby Ball, I don't have to avoid that friend because they have the opposite perspective as me, because maybe we're both on the shadow side, and maybe we're closer than we thought we were. So it's another example of why we need to broaden our awareness and our conception of what's truth, what's real, what's not real. And so that takes us into getting into our personal shadow. So what I want to do now is I want to stop the camera, and we're going to spend 10 minutes going through a small group discussion of a common personal shadow. So before we were kind of talking about the group shadow, the collective consciousness, now we're going to move into the personal shadow, the things that we're taught to stuff and hide because we're taught it's not appropriate in our society. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do. Okay, welcome back. We came back from our second small group analysis, and we decided to look at the personal issue or shadow of saying no in our society. And so what we did in our small group is we put, did we put yes at the top? Doesn't matter. We put yes at the top, we put no at the bottom. We have the shadow side, and then we had the light side. And how did you guys do with that, Chrissy?
We're good.
Okay, so let's start with yes. Let's look at the shadow side of saying yes.
You have, if you say yes all the time, people take advantage of you, and you also don't have any energy to do other things, more important things than saying yes.
But in society, would everyone agree we're sort of taught we're supposed to say yes, and that somehow no is a bad thing? Yeah, I would agree.
Granite mentality.
Yeah. Or it's a polite thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we even have not very nice terms that we use for people that always say no and don't want to do anything, instead of taking a look at why they do that. How about you, Chrissy? What did your group come up with for the yes and the no end?
For yes, on the dark side, when you say yes too much, you become overwhelmed and you thin yourself out.
Absolutely.
But on the light side of saying yes, you can become more productive. New opportunities can open up, but it also depends on the context of the situation that you're saying yes to. And really, the big thing between yes and no also has to fall in line with morals and values.
Oh, yes.
So on the dark side of no, again, it can be harmful to yourself and others. You may feel obligated to say yes, even though you don't want to at that moment. Again, context falls in there. And then for our no's, when you say no, people tend to be disappointed in you for some reason.
They want you to say yes.
So along with that disappointment comes in unforeseen expectations of why they're disappointed in you in the first place, which then leads to hurt feelings of self and others. And look at the situation on either light or dark side of saying no. Is it selfish or is it selfless? Then also the situation. What's the situation that you're about to say no to? Then on the lighter side of saying no, it's a choice. Yes or no is a choice. Saying no can be preventative. Again, affects morals, values. Is it selfless or selfish? And also in saying no, when we say no, we also like to see some acknowledgement in saying no on a positive level. Because again, we're like, oh, I say yes all the time, but I just said no, so how's that going to be? And then we have right in the middle, maybe.
So that's that's this whole big area where probably more likely reality is going to fall into that, isn't it?
So with maybe, on the dark side of that, it's procrastination and lack of commitment. On the positive side of maybe, it's a safeguard and leaves us time to decide whether or not we want to say yes or no.
Absolutely. Bella, what did, sorry, I'm not sure if we covered this already. What were the two basic couple of points on the yes side? Is the shadow side of saying yes is you get drained and you get tired. The light side is you have more opportunities, more experience. And what did we have for the shadow side of the no?
That we could be isolating ourselves.
True.
And that we could be isolating ourselves, and we could also have a pattern of doing that, and we can just get in a rut. And you can say no all the time. You're not actually learning anything new. You're just going with that whole thing, the 50 ways to drive you crazy.
So saying no is in our society is an awful lot like stepping outside of our comfort zone. But the light side of the no is what? What did we have?
The light side is you can actually reserve your energy, and you could actually, because I always do that whole thing with no is how I feel about that person. So that's another positive thing. If you say no to that because you know you're going to have a bad experience with it. So there's a whole thing about knowing your body to say no.
How many of you when you were kids had to hug and kiss relatives that creeped you right out? See, I personally, I'm not sure if I did that with my kids, hopefully not, but I remember that was really hard, always having to say yes. Although on the other hand, we were supposed to say no whenever we were offered anything. Any kind of help, we're supposed to say no. Then no suddenly becomes a virtue, when before it was a shadow. You know what I'm saying? It's complicated. So that's why we want to use our Nubby Balls to really check out some things. Now, nobody has the time in the day to analyze everything. But if you just take opportunities, you may have a disagreement with someone, and you might just mentally whip out your Nubby Ball and go, okay, you know what? There are so many issues that might be happening here. I'm just going to go and do something that makes me happy. I'm going to go have a nice cup of tea, and I'm not going to worry about it, and I have enough faith in my friendship with that person that we're going to work it out down the road. Maybe it's misunderstanding, right? We can take this when we are with people who say, men always are like this, and women are always like that. We can deconstruct it with a Nubby Ball and realize that actually, and then there's a step coming up where we're going to deal with that. Men and women, it's mostly the construct that we've constructed, these rules on what makes a man and what makes a woman. But in reality, is there really that much difference? You'd be surprised how subtle the difference actually is.
A vagina and a penis.
Besides a vagina and a penis, of course, nowadays you can get either one if you want to. I'm going to tell everybody, good work. because it is work. It's a bit of a mind thing. The more you play with this concept, the easier it is to use. Everyone will take it in a new direction, and I can't wait to find out where it goes. Our next one is Quantum Health Transformation 2.0 Step 8 Red. We're going to deal with grounding and birth of core belief systems. I want to remind everybody about my website, where all of this is going to soon be on YouTube and on my website. So for those of you folks at home, I've been working feverishly on getting these videos published, and I had to learn how to use new software, so that's the holdup. My website again is www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. Holton has 2 O's. If you put an E in, you are not going to find me. I have blog articles. I have a newsletter, and all my newsletter articles I reprint in my blog area. I've got my Sybil magazine for the spirit and soul of women. I wrote for them for a year, so I have 12 articles as they appeared in Sybil magazine. I've got transformational videos. I also have podcasts. I have audio podcasts. We have the Quantum Health 2.0, which we're creating now. I've also started to interview healers, so I'll have a section on my YouTube channel where I'm interviewing just local, ordinary people that are doing an amazing job at helping to heal themselves, other people, and the planet. I have all kinds of services if you need any assistance with your journey. And then I have a few products, crystals and Zendone's Organite. And I also do energy assessments if you want to know how you might want to create a better internal environment to your living spaces through Organite. I can help you with that. And I've got a little note here. It says, everything works together to assist you to transform negative energy into positive action. That is actually the purpose behind the whole quantum health transformation. Let's convert and transmute some of this yuck into awesomeness. We got the power, we can do that. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for joining us and watching the show, and we'll see you again next month.
Lion only makes you hurt. Denying only makes it worse. Love and surrender seem the fastest way to bring an end to bitter, painful days. Somewhere down the stars are falling like jewels upon a thin black veil, and you will thrill to hear your calling. 5 seconds seems like 5 billion years, 10,000 galaxies away, yet still so near.